So good morning, I'm Phyllis. I'm facilitating today. For the new people, I'll go over the guidelines of how we operate our meetings to keep it so everybody who wants to speak can be heard. First I will say Erace is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in December of 1993 to show that we treat all people with love and respect. Join us. So many of you have. I don't think we've ever had 22 before.
I agree.
It's 22.
Quite surprising.
So the first thing to know.
So what about Glenn and Greer? Are they here?
They're here. The first
Awesome.
thing to know is that when you want to get on the list, you raise one finger and you need to move it slowly, because if you do it too fast, it just becomes blurry. And I will acknowledge you that I have seen your finger and that you're on the list. When you get on the list, you get to speak for 2 minutes. I keep a timer and you'll hear some sort of a noise, hopefully. And when that goes off, we ask you to wrap up your thought as quickly as possible to allow time for everybody on the list to get to speak. When you're not speaking, we ask that everybody stay muted so that any background noise doesn't become disruptive to the meeting. And if when a person is speaking, you want to ask a clarifying question, and that is a question that you just want the person to say what they meant by a word or a term, not a way to challenge what they said. If you want to rebut what somebody said, raise one finger and get on the list. The clarifying question is 2 fingers. If it's not a clarifying question, or if you seem to drift into making a statement, we'll let you know. Close to the end, maybe in an hour, given this many people, we'll start the wrap up. And during that time, anybody who has not spoken will get a full 2 minutes to speak. Everyone else will get 1 minute, and there are no clarifying questions during the wrap up. Any questions? Okay. So next I'm going to have everybody go around and just briefly say your name and like how long you've been coming to Erace and where you are in the world right now. And I'll call out, I'm getting a weird message. I will call out the names of people because everybody's screen looks different. Dee Dee.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee, and I've been coming to Eracism in Atlanta for a couple of years. And then during the pandemic is when B told me about your group, and I've been coming for a while. I haven't been here for a few months because my life was a little nuts. And so now I'm back. And I don't mind getting up early because I'm in California.
Great to have you back. Beatrice.
I'm Beatrice. I'm here in East Point, Georgia, after the breaking of the levees at Katrina in 2005. Founder with Larry at Erace Atlanta. Been coming though since '93 down in New Orleans. Glad to see everybody. Morning.
Thank you. Yeah, Michelle, I was getting a message about that. She's messaging that I sound wavery to her. I don't know what to do about it. Hopefully it'll all stay and it'll get better. Next is Nora.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Nora. I'm in Austin, and I've been attending the meetings for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, something like that, and always learn something. Thank you.
Thanks. Marla.
Good morning. My name is Marla. I've been attending Erace meetings for almost 2 years, I think now, which is crazy to think. It's like what is time anymore, but I'm in the New Orleans area. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Ginny?
Hi, I'm Jenny, and I've been attending several months, and I'm in Austin.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm Bill Ives, and I've been attending the race for about 4 or 5 years. Always learn something new. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
Good morning, I'm Nancy Moore. I've been attending a race since June of 2007, and I am in the New Orleans area.
Thank you. Francie?
Hi, I'm in Austin, Francie Manning, and I've been attending just over a year, I believe. And Phyllis, this is a fabulous topic. Thanks.
Thank you. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise. I've been a member of Erace for on and off for over 2 decades. Katrina happened and I came to Austin. So I'm in Austin physically, but my heart is still in New Orleans.
Thanks, Louise. Cindy? Cindy?
Excuse me, I just took a bite of apple. I'm Cindy Morse. I'm in New Orleans. Been coming about 5 years. Thank you.
Thanks. Becky?
Good morning. I'm Becky Richardson. I live in Boston, so I'm attending from Boston, and I've been attending for, I think, a couple of years now. It's nice to be here. Really wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. The next person, it says on the screen, CM Bit. I'm not sure what to call you. You're muted. You have to unmute.
Place.
Sorry.
Yeah,
could
my
you start
name
over?
is Vic. Yeah, that's my sister's name on there. My name is Vicky. I'm from Northern California.
Okay.
Nora invited me, and I'm just happy and delighted to be with a like-minded group of people that are discussing very urgent issues.
Great, thank you. Where in Northern California?
Ukiah, Mendocino County.
Oh, beautiful, nice.
Mhm.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I know.
Tammy, welcome back. It's been a long time.
Yes, I've missed you. So my name is Tammy and I've been absent for several months. I've been working Saturday mornings is my excuse, but I've been missing you and I'm glad you're here. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas currently.
Mm.
Lynn.
Good morning. I'm Len Frank, a member since the summer of 2019, and I'm speaking to you from New Orleans, although my picture says otherwise.
Yes, we like your picture though. And Marion. You were already unmuted.
All right, I always do that. Good morning again, everybody. Marion Lagarde, I live in New Orleans. I've been attending the Erace discussion since June of 1993. And a very happy fact I'd like to share with all of you. Beatrice, who lives in Atlanta, and I have known each other since we were little girls in New Orleans. And Beatrice's mother was my 7th grade music teacher.
That's sweet. Thank you. Joe?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe, and I'm here in Austin, and I've been erasing for a little over a month.
Racing, I like it. Thanks, Joe. Michelle?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Michelle, and I'm also in Austin, and I've been coming to Erace since like the summer of 2020 when Louise first invited me, and Francie, who's here as well, is my mother. So look forward to the topic.
Thank you. Stanton?
Good morning, Stanton from Austin, Texas also, my first time. at the invitation of Louise, and looking forward to hearing today's discussion.
Thank you. Welcome for your first time. Glenn? Glenn?
Who?
You.
Oh. Glenn Abdullah from New Orleans, Louisiana. And been coming to Erace since 1994. And I'm the only one that should be worried about being taped.
Thank you. Jean?
Yes, I'm Jean Walker. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I have been coming, I guess, for 6 or 8 months. Beatrice invited me to join. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Great.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Marva and Greer are having internet issues at their house, so they're working on that and they'll come back if they get it resolved. So as I said, I'm Phyllis, and whoever's facilitating picks the topic, and Marla inspired this topic in a conversation we were having about one of these particular items. I won't say which one. She wants to talk about it. I just thought it was really good for all of us, because as to think about all of these different ways these things impact our lives. I think I'll save more than that for the end when I get to do the final facilitator wrap up. Having said that, the list is open. So if you want to get on the list now, raise a finger and hold it up for a bit so I can see. Oh, I see Joe. Okay. I've got Joe. Anybody else? B? Anybody else? Marla? I'm scanning. Michelle? I'm still scanning. Jenny? Okay, so I've got Joe, Beatrice, Marla, Michelle, and Ginny. Is that it for the beginning? Okay, great. Joe, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I was just struck by this article on so many levels, and what I want to say is that there's so much here. I don't know how we'll cover it in such a short time. But as I read and went back and reread, I found myself thinking about, gee, this sounds, a lot of these characteristics came across to me as, well, this was that Midwestern Protestant ethic that I grew up with. And never did I bunch those together like has been done in this article and realize how white supremacy was flowing through all that I thought was just Midwestern Protestant at work ethics. And I just want to thank you for bringing this to us. And I don't even know where to start. Every single one of them I grew up with. You know, it was a in our family, the paternalistic, the power hoarding, everything about it was so this culture it starts very small in our own families and then spreads out from there into the workplace and into the community. And I was just profoundly moved by, as I read this, going, whoa, this is what I grew up with, and never did I attribute it to white supremacy. But now, whole different outlook, new eyes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I have Beatrice.
Having trouble unmuting. Looking at these characteristics of white supremacy culture made me think about some personal experiences. If someone had asked me to kind of name them, I may not have been able to, as they have been put out here, but I'll tell you a couple of personal experiences that were kind of debilitating at the moment that illustrate these characteristics. When I was an assistant principal in Montgomery County, Maryland, we went through something called the assessment center, where in order to be a principal, you had to go through these principal-like activities and you were judged and observed and so on. And one of them was a conversation. I was the only African-American in this particular conversation. There were about 12 people. And every time I expressed an idea, every time I opened up and said something, people might respond, people probably didn't, but if it were something that was against what everybody else was saying, it really was not dealt with at all. And at one point, we were sitting around a table and I just put my head back and just closed out the whole thing. I just let my intellectual capacity, I just denied them of my point of view. And when we were finished, one of the principals who was judging the experience, she was an African-American, a principal herself of many years. She said, Beatrice, don't ever do that. She said, don't let anybody diminish your intelligence because they're not responding to you. Don't let that happen. That was one thing. Quickly, when I was in graduate school at George Washington University in DC, I used to say things in class and answer questions or make opinions. The professor would never wouldn't engage with me or to deepen my point of view as might with others. But at the end of the conversation about some topic, he would say, and as someone said, and would repeat exactly what I said. And I'd always say, I said that. And those examples.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. Next, I have Marla.
Yeah, so there is so much to unpack here for, especially for a white woman. And the thing that Phyllis and I had actually started talking about that I kind of pointed out as far as what I've been trying to work on more is the perfectionism aspect, because I really believe as a white woman that perfectionism permeates every aspect of my life. And definitely very relatable, Joe, what you said about the Midwest values and just kind of how it is under that guise of this is how we grew up, you know, this is our value system. And it's this sort of Protestant work ethic thing and values all together that are somehow held at a higher place for whatever reason. And how over time, these things just become a center of who we are somehow, whether it's mostly, I think, without, like, very unconsciously, you know, that all of that is absorbed and taken in everything that we do. I wanted to also kind of point out just how I've been working more on how perfectionism might impact anti-racist work as a white woman too. So lots to unpack there as well. I wanted to make white folks aware, especially, that Monique Melton is a phenomenal teacher and speaks about anti-racism and teaches classes online. She's on Instagram at MOETIVATE, so Motivate. And right now she's actually offering a second part of Breaking Up with Perfectionism. There's a part 1 that you can watch a replay of. And then for part 2, there's a live, and you can pay what you can. You don't even have to pay a specific amount. So would encourage everybody to follow her if you're into Instagram and take a look at some of the things that she's doing. And just, she goes live sometimes and has these amazing discussions about perfectionism. So anyway,
Thanks.
that's it for now.
Do you want to get
Thank
back
you.
on the list? No? Okay.
I can wait. Thank you.
Okay. Michelle is next, then Ginny, and after Ginny, the list is currently open. Becky?
Yeah, I mean, I just reiterate a lot of what everybody else has said about this, and I will say that this is a condensed version of this paper that she wrote. I read there's another one, a more extensive version of this that's 32 pages long. And it took me several weeks to get through it because, as all of you read of this 9-page document, it's intense. It's really deep. It's really, a lot of times I felt like in my brain it was a bit academic for me, and I had to reread things over and over again to fully process them and understand them the correct way. So yeah, it took me a couple of weeks to get through the 30-page one document, but there is more. You can get even deeper than this for those that are interested. Because there's a website that that she's put together that's fairly new. I think it's only a couple of years
I
old,
see you,
but she
Bill.
started since she originally wrote this in 1999. But yeah, so many of the characteristics, again, I read them and I absorb them and understand them. And there's so many facets in my life where I think about like how these have just become the air that we all breathe as white people, and don't even question where we're coming from or alternatives. It's never thought of as an alternative. And that's the most striking thing to me. It's taken me a long time over the past couple of years of unlearning a lot of this stuff and relearning how to be in this world for me to fully conceptualize all the different parts of this article. So I walk with all of you who are white and are learning this for the first time. It's a lot to take in. So anyway, I'm going to yield the rest of my time to somebody else.
Thank you. Bill has a clarifying question for you, Michelle.
Michelle, is more of a request. Can you put a link to the bigger article in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Great. Next is Ginny, and then Becky raised a finger, and that's the only one I caught. Okay, Ginny, go ahead.
Because this article is so incredibly dense, and I don't know if y'all ever do this, but just I'll throw it out there to discuss it next week. There's certainly enough. So anyway, as I was reading it, several things came up. One was the thing that I was raised with, and I think a lot of us white girls were, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, which I think colors this, greatly. And there's also, to me, an overarching theme of entitlement. You don't power share, you don't, ask for others, whatever. And that's a sense of entitlement that I think is also part of white supremacy culture. And I was also thinking of, and there was a letter to the editor in the Austin paper, and teachers, and I don't know if this is all over, but teachers are leaving the teaching profession, just so massive quantities. And the letter to the editor said, it's great y'all are addressing this, but perhaps you want to include teachers. So they were, having these meetings and organizational meetings, and they weren't including teachers in them. And I'm like, hello. And again, I'm assuming that it was white people doing it. And then the other thing, I was at a meetup group yesterday, walking in a neighborhood of Austin, Clarksville, for y'all live here, used to be a freedmen's community and is actually, for Austin, a little racially diverse. And I said something, and I was trying to remember this morning what it was, but something about slavery or racism. And the guy leading it was like, oh, don't trouble the waters or something. And it was just like, and I didn't really think about it as a white supremacy thing until I read this article. And then the last thing it reminded me of was the quantity versus quality. I was a social worker for most of my career, and we made home visits to families that had young children that were delayed or had medical issues. And for, I don't know, a lot of that time, it was the quality that was looked at. And then it switched to how many visits are you making, and, totally quantity related, and it came from the top down. So those are the thoughts that ran through my head. Thanks.
Thank you, Ginny. Next, I have Becky and then Glenn. Anybody else? Becky, you can go ahead.
Well, I wish I'd read this article when I was actually running an organization and conducting staff meetings. So I feel a little late getting to it because it's very important. But the thing that really struck me even now is the chapter or paragraphs about mistakes. Because I think I really realize that I'm influenced by that I don't want to ever make a mistake, but actually, as the author says, that's how you learn. You take a chance, you make a mistake, and you learn something. But I think that sort of publicly, if you listen, watch television and see people who lose their jobs, perhaps as football coaches, they lose the job from making one mistake. I particularly thought about this in relation to that, and the people making that one mistake are often people of color. So I mean, and you can't help but make a mistake if you play football, I'm sure, or any game. You are obviously going to make mistakes that you learn from. But that is really true. I think that is one of the ways that that we express ourselves, we white people, is the trauma, is that making a mistake is a big mistake. And I liked reading about that. I could identify with that and remember that is really bad. So thanks for this article, and it might be good to spend a second session on this.
Thank you, Becky. Marion, I saw your finger up for a minute. Nora, I was told you had a finger up, so I've got you on the list now. Anybody else? Bill and Tammy? That was, okay. I'm scanning. If you want to get on the list, raise a finger so I can see. So there's a lot of people on the screen. Okay, so I've got Glenn, Marion, Nora, Bill, and Tammy. So Glenn, go ahead.
Well, in African-American culture, we know that to keep a job, we had to be twice as good as the white person. And you can see that the white person can be an inferior worker and nothing will be said, but you make one mistake and it's going to be, it's going to be highlighted. You can't go to your boss and say, well, look what Al's doing over there. I come to work on time every day, don't miss work, but look at his work ethic. They don't even want to hear that. They're going to judge you differently. So you have to be twice as good as a white man if you're going to keep a job or be recognized. That's it.
Thank you. Next is Marion.
Okay, Becky and Jenny both triggered a memory with a couple of buzzwords. I think the one was paternalism and the other one was slavery. This incident happened at a Erace meeting some years ago. There was an elderly white man who was passing by. We were meeting in an area that had been assigned to us in a store. I don't know if Beatrice remembers that, but the guy was passing by and he sort of hung on the fringes. So we allowed him to participate in the conversation, and he was justifying slavery. And one of his justifications was, and I'll always remember this because two of the men really jumped down his throat. He was saying that by West Africans being brought to North America, they were being saved from starvation. So two of the men in the group got on him right away. Man, what is wrong with you? Did it ever occur to you the people were gonna get food eventually? So you white traders are gonna drag people from their homeland across an ocean because they were starving to death. So the man sat there for a little while and he couldn't take that heat too much longer. So he eventually got up and left. But I glanced at the list that I jotted down about paternalism, and I was sitting there and I couldn't believe he said this. So you're going to enslave people for almost 400 years based on the fact that they were rescued or saved from starvation. And I've always thought that was just such a foolish, stupid, just asinine excuse to justify why people were enslaved. Now I know eventually along the way he may have thought about it, but that was his rationale.
Would you like to get back on the list, Marion?
I'm done for now. I want to listen to what everybody else says.
Okay, Nora, you're next.
Okay. I have a really hard time just developing what I want to say. So I always make it really short. And so what's really bugging me is it feels like this is so much just in a vacuum, and not mentioning male supremacy at all. This is really, really bugging me. I don't want to separate the two. I don't want to separate white supremacy from male supremacy. And that's all.
Thank you, Nora. Next is Bill. And I see Jean.
I want to second what Nora just said, because this is white male supremacy. And my daughter is writes about mountain climbing, and she tries to influence a feminist perspective in a male sport. And for white men, mountain climbing is about conquering the mountain. Whereas for women, and these are generalizations, of course, there are always exceptions, but it's about experiencing the mountain and embracing the mountain. And all these characteristics here are characteristics of the American value system that this country was founded on, and was founded on conquering this land and conquering the people in this land. And we need to get, as an educator, I've always fought against these characteristics and try to introduce quite the opposite of what they are. And this perfectionism, they saw perfectionism is the enemy of success, because you need to accept good enough in things. So it was a great article. It is a great article and a lot of detail. I have one other thing to say, but I'll wait till, how much time do I have?
8 seconds.
Well, I'll wait till next time.
Do you want me to put you on at the end of the list right now?
No, I'll let other people talk for a little while and then
Okay.
I'll back on.
Okay, thank you. Next is Tammy.
Hi. Oh my goodness. Thank you for tying up some loose thoughts in my head. So I'm currently teaching in first grade, and I work in a very poor part of town. I probably have the most Caucasian or white kids in my class, and I have a long time, that being about 15 to 20%. So most of the people I am around all day are non-whites. And so I want to say two things. One of, I see this in my classroom. The children are striving to be one of these. They are striving to fit into a system that was built on European Protestants and makes it really difficult for folks. Not that, but the spread of systems have increased and made it difficult for any other cultural groups to gain access. So I really work hard, we actively take place in that. Thank you for making mistakes because we learn from them, trying to get rid of some of these ideas. And I think my second point is, as white people, we need to not separate. I appreciate feminism. I appreciate that women historically have had and continue to have challenges, but it is very important, vital to our work that we do not muddy the waters. This is a racial issue, and it needs to be dealt with as white privilege versus non-white privilege. It seeps into the very fibers of identities. All of my bosses, my superiors at this time, are people of color. And so sometimes when I step outside, I can see their struggle from what they're asking us as staff, their struggle with this Protestant European framework and trying to be themselves to different degrees in each individual.
Thank you, Tammy. That was
Mhm.
really interesting for somebody who has no knowledge of what goes on in schools. That was interesting. Amal, I see your hand, and I have on the list Louise, Beatrice, Jean, Michelle, and Amal. Anybody else? Dee Dee? Anybody else? Okay, Louise, you're up.
So my idea of white supremacy and the problems that we have, obviously there is a whole load of people that want to keep it going, want to, keep the white man on top. But there's also a whole load of people that just have no idea. They're ignorant. I've said that before. They think it's all over. It's done with, slavery's done with. Yeah, we don't. They think this is not going on. They think that it's not difficult for people of color to make it in this world. And that's, I think, the problem that we need to face. And in fact, I'm reading Michelle Obama's autobiography, which is really interesting. And I'm still not past the childhood thing. And I learned something that you just don't think about it, and you just don't know about it. In the 50s and 60s, African-American men were not allowed to get union cards, for trades and stuff. So that really affected their work, and being able to get good jobs, stable jobs. And then, of course, from there on to get, anywho, that was something, again, that I learned. And I'm always thinking that I'm open-minded and learning and inquisitive enough to be able to look around. But there is so much that we don't know, that if you did understand all these things, people wouldn't go around saying, oh no, racism is something of the past, white supremacy doesn't exist. That's obviously BS. But that's it for now. Sorry.
Thank you. Beatrice, you're next.
I find it really difficult to look through these characteristics and see it as an intellectual exercise. The information is of course true and good and valid. The antidotes are good. It is so personal because this is the world that for 78 years I've lived in. And seeing white supremacy at work even now. I think paternalism is involved with the school. Believe it or not, I think the critical race theory laws, believing that the only way that things should be believed are from that what people need to know. I just reread something in Monty Perry's book, of course, that Thomas Jefferson said about the lack of intellectual capacities of Black people. Just as it is the water that people swim in as European Americans. And you just wonder, these antidotes, who's going to ever look at them, who's going to do it? Because it is, if you work in a corporate environment and you are one, and I don't think things have changed much since my experiences with this. Things have not changed that much. People are trying even harder to hold on to power. The fact that the various intelligences that have been found in people, there's no concern. It's either quantitative, or you either can read well, you're literate, or you can do quantitative things well, but other intelligences are still not as valued. And these are, it is just so overwhelming. I find it even hard to speak because it is overwhelming to look at these characteristics in an academic, logical, let's talk about them, think about them. I've lived it, and it's been difficult and painful. And you find so many experiences returning and even wishing you had acted differently. Some people I wish I had slapped, you know, it wouldn't have worked, it wouldn't have helped. It's not the way to solve problems, but anyway, this article is very heartrending, really, to see. And when you think about seventh generation thinking, our legislators only think about what will get them elected again. Seventh generation, please. They stole the land from the Native Americans. We didn't do the land acknowledgement today. There's so much.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right, baby. As an African American, it's sometimes some things are hard to academically or intellectually process. I guess that's what I'm saying. A lot of stuff comes out of my heart because that's what's been hurt.
Yeah.
And that stuff doesn't leave you.
I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you. Next is Jean, who, because I live in New Orleans, I always want to call Jean.
Oh, yes, I know. That's Jean. If it was Jeanne, how would you pronounce that?
Jean.
Still Jean?
Yes.
Jean, okay. I'm sorry. I was back to what Nora said in terms of the white male supremacy. I worked with the International Corporate Organization, and we were the national office. We had one Black male partner and one white woman partner. All the rest were white men. Unfortunately, when there was any blame going around, it was white men that got it, and there were some cases brought against them. I was asked once to review videos that they had for recruiting new people. And when I kept saying, the women look like secretaries, there are no African Americans, no Black or brown people. And I said, in my field, there are many African Americans who are coming to positions of power in their corporations, at least within my field. And I said, you're leaving them out. You're not looking at recruiting them. Well, that was short-lived. I wasn't asked to come back after 2 of those meetings. Another thing is that staff meetings for my particular group, I could say something and no one would say anything. There was a white male who used to repeat what I would say. Oh, that's a great idea. Well, the same thing where they get the credit for it. And we had very few African Americans on staff. Those that we had were primarily admin. And one of my friends who was on staff, she one day came in, she had quit straightening her hair. And boy, listen to all the comments about that with her short afro. She, of course, looked beautiful.
That was time, Jean. Do you want to get back on the list?
No, it's all just like Beatrice says, it all hurts.
Yeah, thank you.
So much.
Michelle, you're next. And sorry, Greer, I did see your hand. I forgot to say. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I just a couple of points that came up for a couple of different people talking about things that I just wanted to say. When I was reading the articles, there were different things that were coming up for me and struck me personally based on my own situation. But one of them, of course, was the perfectionism section. I see many members of my family, stressing that in their lives, the perfectionism. In fact, I have a daughter who's going through eating disorder treatment, and that's a huge component of what she's addressing in her therapy is her perfectionism and how that creeps into everything that she does. And obviously has led in large part to her thinking and ways of she acts around dealing with her eating disorder. And obviously that also comes from the media and the social media messaging that goes around and comes around here in society these days, the perfectionism that's stressed everywhere. And so young people cannot escape that these days. And so again, when I was reading this article and that came up, I was like, yep, I see that. That's completely, how are we going to get away from that? How is that ever going to change? And then therefore, influence the younger generations that are coming through. That's just one of those things that definitely needs addressing. And the other thing that struck me when I was reading through it was in the individualism portion of the article and all the characteristics listed under that, and especially the one about competition more highly valued than cooperation, and where cooperation is valued, little time or resources devoted to developing skills and how to cooperate. And again, in my life, I'm not a very competitive person. I never have been, and that's something that's always been kind of striking a difference with me and several members of my family, especially like my husband, who's very competitive. And it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And it just, again, that characteristic, part of white supremacy, that right then and there, how do we address that? And it permeates so much of our culture here in America because of the fact that how much we value competition. I mean, we see it every day on television, for example, and all the sports that are played out there. And it's just a simple fact of life. It's one of those pleasures that we think as part of white supremacy, or society, I should say, not white society, that's really drilled into us about like competition is good. And it's, again, not being a competitive person, and it's always rubbed me the wrong way how much that is shoved in our faces, and that's perpetuated in everyday life in a lot of different ways that we live and see and do things here. So
Thank you,
just my
Michelle.
commentary.
Do you want to get back on the list?
No.
Okay. Next, I have Amal.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so interesting article. I think one of the things about white supremacy a lot of times is when that word comes up, white people actually think we're talking about them rather than the idea. White supremacy as an idea, not necessarily white people as individuals. And so when Black people say white supremacy, it puts a lot of white people as individuals on the defensive, like, oh, not me. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the idea that permeates this society, that permeates the world. And so understand that you're not as the individual being talked about. Some of the biggest white supremacists that I've ever met were actually not white. They were Black. Why? Now I know a lot of people might find that hard to believe, but there are Black people who harbor white supremacist ideas. And those ideas permeate in the Black community all the time because there are Black people who harbor them. My first encounter with white supremacy didn't come from white people. It came from Black people harboring white supremacist ideas. So understand we're talking about this as an idea, not individuals. So white people there's no need to be defensive when you hear the words white supremacy, because it's not the individual, it's the idea that permeates this society. And it continues to permeate it because nobody wants to deal with it or fight it.
Thank you, Amal. Next is Dee Dee, and then Greer. And I might have room for one or two more before we go into the wrap up. Bill and Tammy. Okay, it'll be closed after Tammy then. Dee Dee, go ahead.
When I read this article, the concepts went straight to what I survived professionally. And Nora, where are you? Anyway, she is right. There you are. Okay. This is white supremacy. It's also white male supremacy. And I also can understand what B went through because I survived the same thing. Because my career was in funeral service, and I went through embalming college and graduated, and then I did my residency, and then I took the California licensure and passed it the first time. And so I was a licensed embalmer, which was the first step to moving up. Well, after that, then I got my funeral director's license, because in California you have to have a license to be, you have to have a funeral director's license to be a mortuary manager. And I got that also. And then I can remember applying for a position as a mortuary manager that a white person with the same qualifications applied for it, and he got the position. Notice the use of he got the position. He was white and a male, okay? And that happened for years because I worked for the same company for 31 years. And so when I was reading this article, it put a definition to what I saw firsthand and what was happening to me firsthand. And it was painful and it was frustrating. And my grandmother, who was a very tough woman who taught me how to kick in doors that aren't open to you, she taught me to push forward. And so my last 9 years in funeral service before I retired, I was a mortuary manager and I was very successful at it. But it was an incredible fight, you know, having people ignore your ideas, ignore your contributions, ignore, I was an excellent embalmer. And that was kind of the last straw with the guys that were embalmers, because they didn't want to embalm with me. And they would, like, when it was my day to embalm, they would take all the embalming machines and carry them out to the garage and leave them there. So that meant that I had to carry them back, and those things weighed more than 50 pounds each. You know, they used to do just petty stuff like that. And so this article really spoke loud and clear as for defining white supremacy, because I lived it.
Thank you very much, Dee Dee. I appreciate that insight. Greer, you are next.
I'm gonna say this. African Americans in the United States weren't ever fighting for acceptance. They were fighting for what they deserved. Not to be liked, not to be loved, but to have full access as citizens of the United States. And like Amal said, white supremacy is a concept that's being used. And it's also used by others who come to this country who are including Black people. Because if you live under, the only thing that good comes out of time and pressure are diamonds. People don't fare well with that, the majority of them. We've always had to fight. We've joined other people's fight. Example, feminism used Black women in their numbers. Gay rights, LGBTQI, they use Blacks in their numbers. But at the same time, when they achieved what they wanted, African Americans still had their first fight. And those same people who used their numbers turned around and say, We did it, why can't you? It's like when the immigrants come to this country. And they were like, well, the Italians did it, the Irish did it. None of those people came to this country like we did. Nobody was held down, bound to ignorance, because to read or write was death. And also, I'm not going to just put it on a white man. Let's put it on the white women too. How many white women have used their power because they knew they had the ability to, and lives were ended? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. Next is Bill.
I was second what two people said. First, what Amal said. I fought all these characteristics when I was in the corporate world. I was working for a large consulting company. And I've seen these characteristics in white women. I've seen these characteristics in Black men. And they're not my values, and I don't pretend at all to suffer from these characteristics like a Black person did. But these are not my values. And competition versus cooperation. In my company, it was competition. And I was forced as a manager to rank order all of my people who work for me. And that was a terrible thing because it created competition amongst the people on your team. You never knew who was stabbing you, going to stab you in the back. And I suffered from being forced to do that. So what Dee Dee said, I survived this professionally, and they say that success is 80% emotional intelligence and 20% skills. But these characteristics are, to me, the opposite of emotional intelligence. There was a meme that said, STEM without humanities creates villains. And we need to, if people who have these characteristics have become villains in a white supremacist way, but it's not tied to a particular race or gender, but the predominance of white men have these characteristics. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Tammy, and then we'll go into the wrap up.
I think, oh, I'm going to be quiet, but then people say things that are so inspiring. I think Ahmed and Greer, Amal and Greer really hit the nail on the head with that. And so that's part of the challenge in school, is to get students, children, to see their own power and to be able to look beyond that, because as white people who have had the luxury of growing up comfortable in these institutions based on the characteristics, we don't think about it. That's why we need to really come alive with a critical eye, looking for ways to help, because young people still lose their lives to this. I had a biracial nephew. He lost his life this summer, a summer ago, for essentially growing up brown in a white community. We watched it. We tried to encourage him, but, he would say things to us like, I just don't fit in. And he had been trained in these characteristics. And I love Nancy because Nancy always calls me on this. And so I'll go, Nancy always calls me on this, but the only thing different, he was born into a small rural community. He was born into the
the type of Protestant characteristics, but yet people in the community would use that against him. And like Greer put a fine point on it, that becomes part of your internal persona and self-perception. And alcoholism, I can't think of any reason why someone has blood pressure problems at 31 years old. So a very creative, talented person didn't get to produce in our culture.
Thank you very much, Tammy. I'm really sorry for your family's loss. I'm sorry. Okay, now we'll go into the wrap up. I'm going to read off the list of the people I have for having 2 minutes, and correct me if I'm wrong. Cindy, Vicky, Lynn, Stanton, Nancy, Marva, and Francie. Did I miss anybody who didn't speak at all? Okay, good. And I'll try to remember after the 2-minute people to go into the 1-minute people. I always forget. So you all will have, as I call your name, you'll have 2 minutes and you are free to pass and not say anything. Cindy, we'll start with you.
It's been interesting to listen to everyone's ideas. My career in a classroom for 40 years was with very small people, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. I've made it all the way to 6-year-olds in 40 years. They're different because they're so open. I'm sure that they've acquired a lot of the norms of the culture, but in a group of 25 to 30, they become fast friends across race, across culture, across economics, without so much of the put down kind of stuff that's in the larger culture. I think that insulated me from being more aware of this. Certainly I know it's out there in the large scheme, but kids can and do cooperate quite well when given the free opportunity. I don't know how to promote it more, but it certainly needs to be. All schools should accept the range of beliefs within a functioning group. It's hard to know how to make it more open, more accepting, but I know it can happen. Interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Next is Vicky. You'll have to unmute, Vicky.
Okay. Well, this has all just been a really good discussion. I had an experience where I was in a garden club that was functioning very well in a real cooperative kind of style. And then this lawyer woman came in, and so reading the article, I just saw her in every paragraph, and it was very hard, and it blew the whole organization apart. So, you know, that's kind of the only time I've had that kind of experience and how hurtful it was. So, you know, I just try to generalize that to how it must feel for all kinds of people to experience our culture. I tried to move as far away from it as I could. And I did live in the woods for 10 years. And I feel like I successfully raised children that are very peaceful Buddhists, care about everybody. So I know it can be done, but there's also some downsides to that. So thank you for letting me join the group.
Thank you for being here. You're welcome anytime. Next is Lynn.
Well, two of the characteristics that struck me were the either or mentality, which could also be compared to win or lose. Either you win or you lose, but we could have such a richer society if we were open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. But the other thing is we want fast results. And so you've got to pick a winning strategy and you don't have time to explore other options. And that's why the gifts that African-American people, the gifts that women could bestow upon our society are just trampled in the mad rush to do something quickly. Very good article. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Lynn. Next is Stanton.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. I want to add, and this is by no means a way to detract from anything, but I am a white man, obviously, from my parents, but I'm also a gay man and I'm a Jewish man. And I haven't had the same depth of experience that some people have expressed, but I will tell you that there are microaggressions that I experience on a daily basis, either because I'm gay or because I'm Jewish. And if we're going to broaden the discussion, I think it has to be more inclusive than gender, race. It could also be religion. It could be sexual orientation. So I just wanted to throw that in as something for possibly future discussion that, again, I'm not going to say things are comparable as far as the experience, but there are experiences that I could express that have had as equally a crushing and devastating effect, even in the reverse, where there's an expectation, well, let the Jewish guy handle it because I'm supposed to be smart. And I find that as offensive as anything else from somebody thinking that the other person is not as smart. So there are these, like I say, expectations that we all have of each other based on a culture of oppression that hopefully can be expanded on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stanton. We hope you'll join us again.
Yeah, I found this very interesting.
Great. I'm going to take a minute to say to Vicki and Stanton, if you would like to get on the mailing list to receive our topic every week, if you want to type your email into the chat, I can put you on the mailing list. So if you want to do that. And then Nancy, you are next.
I guess since this is, the wrap up, I just wanted to say it was a very interesting topic. It was good to hear, the people who did speak, their perspectives on everything. I didn't really say much. This was kind of more of a topic where I preferred to just listen to what people had to say and learn from what everyone else had to say. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
It was
Nancy.
very enlightening.
Thank you. Marva?
Good topic. I know I agree with Amal. My first experience as a child with discrimination came within my race. I grew up in a well-mixed neighborhood of Blacks, Greeks, Germans, Hispanics, and Jews in mid-city. And the so-called Creoles, which were light-skinned people of color, Blacks, would treat myself and other dark complexion Blacks. It is the old teaching of slavery time, divide and conquer, taught during slavery. Their parents would teach them they were better than darker complected Blacks. And later on, I experienced white discrimination as I left my neighborhood and entered the work field and went to college. And I experienced outside racism from outside of my race. Thank you. I learned a lot by listening to discussion. And I'm sorry I got in late. I was experiencing technical difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marva. Next is Francie, and then we'll go into the 1 minutes.
Well, this is such a complicated topic. I saw myself in one way or another in every one of the categories that were broken down, both as an offender and sometimes having other white people offend me. Wished I'd had this knowledge 25 years ago when I might have had a better opportunity to implement some of the ideas and self-correct some of my bad behavior or uninformed behavior. And I would like to second that this would be a good topic to revisit. Thanks to everyone who shared.
Thank you, Francie. Okay, now we'll go through the 1 minute people. So Dee Dee, would you like to start? Sorry, Vicki, you were asking a question?
No, I was sending you my email address so I could be on the mailing list.
Aren't you on the mailing list?
No, and usually B sends it to me. And so, because you guys meet every week, and that would be wonderful.
Yeah, go ahead and send it. I'll come back to you, okay?
Okay.
Want to do it that way. Next, I think Vicki left, is Nora.
So I really liked the image that Bill mentioned his daughter's perspective on rock climbers, about men conquering the mountain and women embracing the mountain. I also thought about how these concepts in the article applied to the larger issues, currently Ukraine and Russia, and how we view the refugees coming out of that situation compared to refugees of color that have come from other conflicts. So my mind just kind of boing, boing, went all over the place with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Okay. I see your email, Dee Dee. You want to go then and give your wrap up?
Yeah, this article put a name to some of the things that all of us have had to survive in one form or another. And I particularly appreciated Stanton's situation because he's been getting it from all sides. And, you know, that's tough. I mean, he doesn't have one free spot anywhere, you know, so I'm glad that you shared with us today, and I'm glad that you're here today. And I liked the article. It was fast reading, and it was very clear. It was very plain, and it put a name to what we are all surviving on one level or another.
Thank you very much. The second, what you said about Stanton's presence. comments, really good. Next, Becky. Becky.
Well, it was a very interesting full article, but I think also it's a wonderful response from all of you who are gathered here today. So it was, the combination was really spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Next is Marion.
Where'd she go? Oh, there she is.
First of all, my sincerest condolences to Tammy on the passing of her precious nephew. And secondly, thank you, Phyllis, for this very insightful, very valuable article. I like the way it was divided into the categories. I was able to highlight my notes: perfectionism, sense of urgency, paternalism, only one right way. I really got a lot of understanding out of it by highlighting the categories. It's so important that we have these discussions, and I really do appreciate us having this discussion today, and I appreciate everyone's comments. So thanks again, Phyllis, for sharing this with us.
Thank you. Next is Joe.
First of all, I just also want to thank Stanton for sharing and for being here. I hope he comes back. I really hope you come back, Stanton. The phrase culture of oppression just kind of washed over me. And even though we're a small group, I hope we're a mighty group that's expanding, and it, to me, this culture of oppression is so permeates the world, and it boils down to worth and value, that everyone has worth, and many are suppressed. That worth and value is suppressed or ignored, and I'm hoping that this group just continues to expand so that everyone globally, whether you're here in the US or you're in Ukraine, you know you have value, and not just you know it, but everyone knows it. And I also want to thank you. In this article, coming from that Midwest value system, I love action plans, which I'm trying to move past. But I thought the antidotes in this article were very helpful. And I hope we'll talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Jean, you're next.
Well, as everyone else has said, thank you for the article, Phyllis. Very enlightening, and I appreciate everybody's input regarding it, and it's just very painful. And I do appreciate what everybody has shared with us. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy?
I'm so glad to see you all. I don't know if I'll be able to make it often, but you guys are in my thoughts often. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Glad you made it today. Bill?
Yeah, great article, Phyllis. And because I'm white, I'm not gay, and I'm not Jewish, I was initially given a pass on these characteristics, but they're counter to my values. So once I started to do things, I wasn't given a pass. And I spent most of my life doing education programs for corporations. So I tried to subvert this. And one of the programs we did was a call center, and we set up a laboratory so they would do the job. And instead of grades, or instead of who is best, we said the fast learners have to help the slow learners. Because we wanted to train cooperation and collaboration. And I think that's what we should install in the school. Instead of having grades, have the fast learners help the slow learners. And that would change things. Anyway, thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you very much. Michelle.
Thanks, Phyllis, for bringing up this article. It was really interesting conversation. And again, I'm impressed by the size of the group today, too. I hope we continue to have this many people. And I welcome all the people that are new today or are rejoining the group being absent. And I just, again, I've pointed this out before, but it would be so nice if we had more men join the group because we can see we're heavily female. And, you know, as I've been saying all along too, you know, the large majority of the articles that we read too are written by women because the women are the ones pulling the weight here as far as this work is concerned. And it's been pointed out by a lot of people's commentary. So it would be nice to see more men join the group. Thank you for those of you that are here. I do definitely appreciate your perspective. It really is helpful. And hopefully Pedro will be able to join us again next time as well. He's another white man who usually joins, for those of you who don't know. And he will be, hopefully. He's manning a table where we're trying to get more people involved with Erace here in Austin. And again, as part of it, you know, those of you who may or may not know, Tima Oken, who wrote this article, is a white woman. So again, there's that other perspective of a white woman doing the work for us, all of us here. You know, women, I should say. And yes, we should definitely revisit this topic. So thank you.
Thank you.
I hope everybody has a good weekend.
Thanks, Michelle. Louise.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Bill said, the fast learners need to teach the slow learners. And that's exactly, I think, what I was trying to say as well about the ignorance, you know, of not knowing about all of these things that have been going on and denying, you know, it's kind of like Holocaust deniers. It's like, come on, there's so many facts to see that white supremacy exists. Tammy, I really hope you do come back. It was great to have you here, and everyone else that came today that hasn't been before. That's really good, and I really want to see y'all next time if possible, and have a great week, y'all.
Thanks, Louise. Next is Marla.
Yep, just immense gratitude to everybody within our little community. It's brought forth so many different perspectives for me, and I'm grateful for all of them. I just wanted to throw in, regarding the antidotes, a little bit of hope. I had a conversation with my 18-year-old daughter about some of this, and she said, you know, what about the 2024 election? What's going to happen? And she said, you know what, Mom, I look at people around me who are my age, and it gives me a lot of hope that things can really be different for the future. And I sincerely believe that the youth are really going to bring it and hopefully save the country, maybe from itself. I don't know, but these are the types of people, I think, who are going to bring forth in action the antidotes, some of the antidotes that are listed in this article. So that's it. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, Marla. Next is Beatrice.
Yeah, I'd like to add my condolences to Tammy and the loss of her nephew. And I think we are fortunate to be participants in a group where people can share their pain and feel comfortable and not feel that it's a problem. Great article. Thank you for that, Phyllis. To Stanton, our Atlanta group, we have a longstanding member who is a gay man, and it makes a difference in his presence being there, no matter what the conversation is. I remember reading that Antonin Scalia said that Thurgood Marshall being there made a difference in how things were viewed on the Supreme Court, even if his opinion may not have been shared or heard. So our diversity makes a difference. A great discussion. Everybody have a great Saturday. We've got pretty weather here. Hope y'all get outside and do something good. Thanks, Phyllis. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Beatrice. Next is Amal.
Sorry about that. Unmute. Yeah, great article. For those who might not know who what the People for Survival and Beyond is, you get the idea through the article. That group has been doing a lot of work, and particularly here in New Orleans. I attended one of the workshops some years ago. So great information that they teach and offer. Once again, white supremacy. The idea of it, and not only white people perpetuate these ideas, so we have to clean up this idea where we're at. And once you start cleaning up the idea where you're at, then you can help spread cleaning up the idea to others. I know whenever I hear Black people perpetuate white supremacist idea, I call it out immediately, because I think sometimes you do things unconsciously without realizing it. You were raised with this. And particularly Black people who lighter skinned Blacks who look down on darker skinned Blacks, Black people who have straighter hair versus the hair that's like myself. We perpetuate these white supremacist ideas and not realize we're doing it. So if it's not called out, or if we just let it go or let it slide, or don't think it's that serious, then it continues. So it's up to us to start calling these things out when we hear it. And if we don't, then conversations like this continue.
Thank you. Next is Glenn. Glenn Abdullah.
Thanks for the article. I enjoyed it, and hope it gets revisited again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Greer.
I enjoyed the article. I also suggest that you guys watch a documentary called Unnatural Causes. Is racism killing us? Because if you think about it, if a woman's carrying this child, and she's dealing with racism, then by transference, the child is dealing with racism, because whatever physiologically affects the mother affects the child. And we even see that reflected today in the mortality rates of African-American women, because when they say something is wrong, they're not believed. They're not dying from maladies associated with being pregnant. They're dying because of negligence and malpractice, because when they say something is not right, no one believes them, and then they die. That's how strong racism and white supremacy is. It's killing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. I'm sorry, we don't do clarifying questions, Bill.
I just had a request. Could Greer share a link to that documentary? I'd love to watch it.
I'll find it and send it to you.
Okay. It was called Unnatural Causes, Is Racism Killing Us? So thank you everyone for your attendance. We actually had 24 people on today, which is, I think, the most we've ever had. I'll just quickly say some comments I had, and I want to, if people aren't aware of this book, Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad, S-A-A-D. It's backwards, I know. She, this is kind of a workbook where there's some reading and then you can do some writing to help yourself deal with the effects of white racism in your life, externally and externally. This is Layla. No, not my cat Layla. And I recommend it. I'm in another group and we worked through this book together. I have to say I sort of had a dual reaction to this article. It's like the feeling I get when I bump up against these things outside of myself, like at work or at school or wherever, versus when they're inside me. And they're both uncomfortable, but the internal stuff is maybe more subtle. I was made in this article for a lot of the points to think about when I was at social work school and having to do group projects. A lot of times with a group of other white women, not always, but a lot of the times. And there's the perfectionism, there's the get it done, there's, you know, either or thinking, there's all these things that played into it. And you could almost predict, like, there's going to be a perfectionist in the group, there's going to be a slacker in the group. I was never either of those. There's going to be someone for whom, no matter how much work is going in, it's never enough. And so those are really, a lot of us from social work school joke about having PTSD from that. I'm glad the connection between white supremacy culture and the patriarchy got raised almost in the very beginning. I appreciated that. And the way that is also connected to the Midwestern Protestant ethics that a lot of us in this group were raised under, how that really is patriarchy when you boil it down. I'm trying to read my own writing that I wrote earlier. And then some of the comments people made, I think this is something that exists in a system, but it also is something that is exhibited in the world by individual white people, especially because they don't necessarily know that these things exist as white supremacy. Some of the language people used, like debility, that they survived these things, and calling them values, which I think was a great term, because often we think of values as being positive things that we believe in or feel. And I think in this, these are also values. Values can be negative. And lastly, I'll just say the either or thinking concept. I mean, I see that this is kind of why I stopped watching the news, is because it's always like just one, here's this idea or this idea. There's never a range. There's never sort of any depth of conversation. There's just like, it's either this way or this way. And that's how people become really binary in their thinking and can't see bigger issues. And it's funny because social work answer is also, well, is it this or this? And we'll be like, you know, or all these other things. So I appreciate everybody's participation and comments and sharing today. And I will now stop the recording and we will do announcements.